Single dad was tricked into Christmas blind date. But what she did left him in tears. Christmas had never felt this heavy to Adam before. The lights lining the streets glowed warmly. Shop windows were dressed in red and gold, and cheerful music floated through the cold air, but none of it reached him. For Adam, a 34-year-old single father, December was no longer about joy. It was about survival. About getting through the days without letting his 7-year-old daughter, Lily, see how exhausted he truly was. Since his wife had passed away 2 years earlier after a sudden illness, Adam's life had narrowed down to a routine of school drop-offs, long work hours, frozen dinners, and quiet nights where grief crept in once Lily fell asleep. Friends slowly drifted away, unsure of what to say to a man who still carried loss in his eyes. Family lived far, and Adam rarely asked for help. He believed that being strong meant carrying everything alone. A week before Christmas, Adam's sister-in-law, Rachel, called him out of the blue. She spoke with unusual excitement, insisting that Adam needed a break and that she had arranged something special for him. Adam resisted immediately. The idea of meeting someone new felt wrong, almost like a betrayal to the life he once had. He told Rachel he wasn't ready, that his focus was Lily. That Christmas was already stressful enough. Rachel didn't argue at least not openly. She simply said it was just coffee, nothing serious, and that the woman knew Adam was a single father. What Rachel didn't say was that this was not a casual suggestion. It was a carefully planned blind date, disguised as a friendly meetup. Set on Christmas Eve morning, Adam arrived at the diner reluctantly, snow clinging to his coat as he stepped inside. The place was warm, softly lit, decorated with modest Christmas decor that felt comforting yet overwhelming. He chose a booth near the window, hoping the meeting would be short. He told himself he'd stay 15 minutes, be polite, then leave. As he waited, his thoughts drifted to Lily, who was at home with a neighbor while he ran this errand. He felt guilty for even being there, as if he were wasting time that should belong to her. When the woman finally walked in, Adam stood briefly out of habit, then sat back down, unsure of how to act. Her name was Sarah. She looked kind, not flashy or intimidating, dressed simply, her eyes carrying a calm seriousness. She smiled gently, but there was something reserved about her, as if she too was bracing herself for something difficult. The first few minutes were awkward. Small talk hovered between them: weather, traffic, the holiday rush. Adam answered politely, but without warmth, his guard firmly in place. He had no intention of opening up. He kept reminding himself this was a mistake, a setup, something he hadn't agreed to fully. Sarah noticed his distance but didn't push. Instead, she spoke softly, letting pauses exist without rushing to fill them. That somehow unsettled him more than forced cheerfulness would have. When she asked about Lily, Adam stiffened. He answered briefly, clearly proud but cautious, as if protecting his daughter even in conversation. Then Sarah did something unexpected. She didn't steer the conversation back to safe topics or attempt to impress him. She simply asked, "Is Christmas hard for you?" The question hit him harder than he expected. Adam laughed it off at first, but the sound came out hollow. He nodded, then shook his head, unsure which response was more honest. He hadn't planned on talking about his feelings, certainly. Not with a stranger, but the weight of the past 2 years pressed down on him all at once. The sleepless nights, the mornings where he had to pretend everything was okay, the moments when Lily asked questions he didn't know how to answer. His hands trembled slightly as he wrapped them around his coffee cup. Adam tried to explain lightly, but his voice betrayed him. Words stumbled out how he felt like he was failing, how he never seemed to do enough, how every holiday reminded him of what was missing. He stopped suddenly, embarrassed by his own honesty. He apologized, saying he didn't know why he was sharing so much. Sarah didn't interrupt. She didn't look uncomfortable or pitying. She listened fully, her eyes never leaving his face. When he finally fell silent, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope, placing it gently on the table between them. "I know this wasn't what you expected today," she said quietly. "And I know you didn't ask for this meeting. But there's a reason I'm here." Adam frowned, confusion replacing his vulnerability. His chest tightened and a sinking feeling settled in his stomach. He suddenly felt foolish for opening up, for thinking this was anything other than an awkward obligation. His hands moved to his face, pressing against his temples as if trying to hold himself together. The noise of the diner faded into the background. Whatever was about to happen, he could feel it mattered and he was not ready for it. Adam stared at the envelope, on the table, as if it might disappear. If he didn't acknowledge it, his hands still covered part of his face, his elbows pressing into the wood, his breath uneven. He finally looked up at Sarah, confusion and a quiet fear tangled in his expression. She didn't rush him. She waited until he slowly lowered his hands and nodded, giving a silent signal that he was listening. Only then did she speak again, her voice steady but careful, as if every word mattered. She told him that Rachel hadn't just arranged a blind date. She had reached out to Sarah with a purpose. Sarah worked as a pediatric nurse at the same hospital where Adam's wife had spent her final weeks. She hadn't been directly involved in the treatment, but she remembered Lily clearly, remembered Adam too, sitting beside the bed every night, refusing to leave even when exhaustion hollowed him out. At the time, Sarah had admired him from a distance, not romantically, but humanly. Seeing a man hold himself together for his child while his world quietly collapsed. Adam's throat tightened as he listened. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected someone else to remember those days so vividly when he himself tried so hard to forget them. Sarah explained that after Adam's wife passed away, the hospital had started a small, anonymous support fund for families struggling after loss. Rachel had reached out recently, not asking for money, but asking if there was anyone who could remind Adam that he wasn't invisible, that what he had done and continued to do mattered. Sarah volunteered not as charity, not as obligation, but because she understood grief in a way that didn't require fixing it. She slid the envelope closer to him. Inside, she said, was not money. It was something else entirely. Adam hesitated before opening it, his fingers shaking slightly, as he pulled out a folded letter and a small stack of papers. The letter was written in neat, familiar handwriting. His chest seized when he recognized it immediately. It was from his wife, written during her last days, addressed to him, and Lily tears blurred his vision, as he read words meant for a future she knew she wouldn't see. Words filled with love, gratitude, and quiet reassurance. She wrote about trusting Adam to raise Lily with kindness, about believing in his strength even when he didn't. She wrote about Christmas mornings, about laughter, about the importance of letting others help. Adam broke. The walls he had built over 2 years collapsed in seconds. His shoulders shook as silent sobs overtook him, his hands gripping the paper as if it were the last solid thing in the world. Sarah didn't speak. She didn't touch him. She simply stayed, letting him feel everything he had buried for so long. When he finally looked up, his face was wet with tears, his eyes red. But something in them had shifted, like a weight had been named at last. Sarah explained the remaining papers gently. They were confirmations therapy sessions prepaid for Lily, childcare support for the evenings Adam worked late, and a handwritten note from Rachel promising that he would no longer have to do everything alone. This wasn't about fixing his life or replacing what he had lost. It was about easing the load he carried silently every day. Adam shook his head slowly, overwhelmed, whispering that he didn't deserve this. Sarah met his gaze and said something he would remember forever. You don't earn support by suffering enough. You deserve it because you're human. They sat there for a long time after that, the diner slowly emptying around them. Adam talked not about pain this time, but about Lily, about her drawings taped to the fridge, her questions about the stars, her quiet bravery. Sarah listened and smiled, not with pity, but with genuine warmth. When they finally stood to leave, there was no promise of romance, no dramatic ending, just an understanding. As Adam stepped back into the cold, the Christmas lights no longer felt mocking. They felt softer, almost forgiving. For the first time in years, he didn't feel tricked. He felt seen.